Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Friday Night Review. Hold tight to your seats tonight. This one's kind of, I feel, a little complicated. But we're starting off with pliancy, which you know is a topic I like, so that's good. Let's first sit quietly, and then we'll do some prayers to really help guide our minds to what we want to do. And then I'll set a motivation.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger.
By way of motivation tonight, I wanted to think about precious human life, the opportunities that we have right now. And even though these 4 people just went around the moon and just got back about an hour ago to Earth, our opportunities are greater than theirs. We have all the conditions that we need to actually develop ourselves fully, which is sorely needed. Any progress we can make in our lives, in this very life, will be so helpful to those who are around, and it will ripple out. So let's take this opportunity to set our highest spiritual motivation. For us at the Abbey, that's the mind of bodhicitta. We're brought in, as they say. We see the suffering of sentient beings, and we want to do something about it. We want to become awakened and then be able to be of the greatest benefit. And even before then, we'll train ourselves without delay, without obstacles. Just, of course, they come, but without letting them take us away from our goals. So step by step, we use this opportunity that we have. So, last week we had the review about the 9 states of sustained attention, the antidotes and all that, working on that. We're moving forward in the book. We're on page 201 to 217. That's what we're reviewing tonight. So this now is moving from going through these 9 stages of cultivating sustained attention, using the 6 powers, the 4 attentions, to achieving serenity. And so the question is actually, because you have to achieve pliancy in order to achieve serenity. So what are the means to achieve pliancy? That's the first big part of this review. And then upon achieving it, how does that lead to serenity? That's the basic first part of this topic. There's kind of 2 main topics in these pages. And so this part of the text, this is the one thing I want you to memorize. The only thing. It goes in an order, in a sequence. Mental pliancy, physical pliancy, bliss of physical pliancy, bliss of mental pliancy. So it starts with mental and it ends with mental. Pliancy, pliancy, bliss of pliancy, bliss of pliancy. So this is what happens in order to attain serenity. We have to, after the 9th stage of sustained attention, in order to achieve serenity, we have to cultivate the pliancies and the bliss of these pliancies. So there's terminology that comes up in this. And I want to just mention a couple of them first. One is physical dysfunctions, and another is mental dysfunctions. And these are the things that are in the way of achieving pliancy, essentially. So physical dysfunctions are related to prana, or the winds in the body. They make the body kind of heavy and uncomfortable. And when we try to engage in virtue, that heaviness and uncomfortableness, the body is kind of like holding us back. The mental dysfunctions prevent us from taking delight in eradicating afflictions. So these are kind of states that we need to overcome. So how do we go about this? How do we achieve pliancy? Because that's what basically overcomes these. And so Tsongkhapa explains this, and so does His Holiness and Venerable Children, according to a Sangha. And a Sangha says, what is pliancy? It's a serviceability of the body and mind due to cessation of these physical and mental dysfunctions. It has the function of dispelling all obstructions. And when you look this up, that quote, obstructions is actually the hindrances, the actual word that it comes from in the Lama Shimro translation. That's actually hindrances there. And so that's the big point here. So these are both the mental and physical kind of unfitness. Your body and mind are really unfit, and you need remedies for that. And the remedies are the physical and mental pliancy. They give you this like serviceability, which I just think is fantastic. And I was thinking about like, why do I like that? Maybe because I've had fibromyalgia my whole life. It just kind of dawned on me like, I kind of have a certain kind of tuned in-ness that maybe some people haven't had to deal with. And it's like, serviceability is kind of nice. You know, I mean, I don't have much trouble with it, but I can see how it can be a real drag. I've had enough experience. So then when you have this kind of serviceability, you can apply yourself, the body and the mind, you can apply them to wholesome actions, and you're free of because you're free of these dysfunctions. So the physical dysfunction is included in the category of afflictions. It's what interferes with your delight in eliminating afflictions. And the mental dysfunctions are also included in the category of afflictions. What interferes with the delight in eliminating afflictions. You can't eliminate these afflictions because you are not having pleasure in focusing on a virtuous object. When you develop concentration, it's important to have a certain kind of mind that will easily allow you to do that. It's like when we have anger for somebody, we have to have like the total opposite to help dispel that, right? When you have love, you can't have anger in the mind at the same time. They just can't coexist. And there's some things that are just, it's a little easier to make the mind go a certain way. You know, like when you dispel certain thoughts of why you're angry at somebody, it's a little easier to let go of it, and it's a little easier to work with the mind. If you hold on to these thoughts because we all know about anger, maybe more than we know about concentration, right? So if you hold on to the thoughts that are making you angry, it's very hard to dispel it. It's very similar. The mind that wants to concentrate is actually a mind that has a certain kind of joy, even bliss. That's why those things are part of the process, because it's easy to keep it there, right? And once you're free of these mental dysfunctions, then the mind will focus without resistance. It's a serviceable mind. That's what's happening there. And Sravasti describes these. So there's going to be, I think, a little bit of redundancy here, but I think it's good to hear this from in different voices. He describes this as the serviceability of the body is that from which lightness and buoyancy arise in your physical actions. The serviceability of mind is the cause of cheerfulness and lightness of the mind, engaging in perfect attention. So that's quite helpful, right? If we can just get our mind going in that direction. So if you're endowed with these kind of qualities in your mind, then when you focus the mind, which is what you're trying to do in concentration meditation, you're trying to develop single-pointed concentration, you can do it without resistance. Therefore, this is called serviceability of the mind. You're not fighting against your own physical and mental dysfunctions. So in short, this unserviceability of the body and mind, even when you strive to eliminate afflictions, you have to do it with so much, you have to be it's so strenuous and exhausting, it's hard. And you do it with a sense of distaste. You're like, you're not into it. It's like hard work, and it's like when something feels like hard work, it's not easy to do. And so that's what we're overcoming. And when pliancy is achieved, these tendencies stop, and the body and mind are very easy to make use of. So, I mean, who wouldn't want that? And this is a thing, like the second thing I hope that you can remember from tonight is that these physical and mental service abilities, these abilities, they arise to a slight degree from the time you start to cultivate concentration. And most people forget that. And I think that's important not to forget, because we should be on the lookout for it. It's subtle, so we don't recognize it. Eventually, that serviceability that we're developing, it gradually increases until it turns into a pliancy and one-pointed meditative serenity. But it's, I think, important to try to recognize that. So if you kind of just, we all kind of have the idea of what it's like to like slug through something that you don't want to do, kind of like your BBC today. You know, like when you don't really want to do something, but how you turn the mind so you want to, kind of thing. We know what that's like in our day-to-day life. So when you're working on concentration, you should kind of attend to this a little bit. Like, there are times when the mind, I mean, even when we're doing like other work, like when I'm working on the computer, like a lot of my offering service, I choose what I'm going to do somewhat by how much concentration I have. Like if I have to like do something that really takes a lot of concentration and I don't have the bandwidth for it, I wait and I do something that like, I might do something like data entry, you know, like where I don't have to think a lot, you know, or I'll do something else, you know. So it's not so different from that. You know, I think we should be on the lookout for that when we're working on concentration, be aware of what's happening in the body and the mind. And there's times where it's easier, there's times where it's harder. So I would say we should be aware of that. But it is subtle at first, but later it becomes easy to recognize. And it gets to the place where it's very easy to recognize. Asanga explains this. So I added a lot of things to this chapter from Asanga, because he explains things again, and it's good to hear. He says, at the very beginning, when you begin the correct training, the occurrence of mental and physical pliancy and mental and physical serviceability is subtle and difficult to discern. As that one-pointed mind and mental and physical pliancy increase in a manner of a chain reaction, they are led to a one-pointed mind, and mental and physical pliancy are obvious and easily to discern. So then the chapter goes on to explain what are the signs of pliancy. So pliancy is actually easy to discern when it's perfected. And it's like this. There's kind of like these 4 steps, right? It starts with mental pliancy, then physical pliancy, then bliss of physical pliancy, and bliss of mental pliancy. So we're on number 1, the mental pliancy. The meditator who strives to cultivate concentration will experience a sense of heaviness and numbness of the brain, but it's not unpleasant heaviness. And this is where they compare the sensation of a warm hand placed on a bald head. You read that and you're like, what? So, but actually, this is something that happens that's easy to discern. That's why they say it's easy to discern. As soon as this occurs, they're free of mental dysfunction that obstructs their delight in eliminating afflictions, and mental pliancy, the remedy for this dysfunction, has arisen for the first time. So that's the sign of this first step. And then Asanga describes this. The sign, he calls it the portent, but I don't use that word. A synonym is sign, of the proximate or immediate occurrence of obvious, easily discernible one-pointedness of mind and mental and physical pliancy is a sensation of the brain becoming heavy, but it's not a harmful characteristic. As soon as this happens, you eliminate mental dysfunction that belongs to the category of afflictions and obstructs your delight. In eliminating afflictions, and the mental serviceability and mental pliancy, which are the remedy for this dysfunction arise. So he's just saying the same thing, everything in one. It's these mental dysfunctions are afflictions, and you've just gotten over them, and the sign is quite obvious to meditators. So that's the first thing, the mental pliancy. Then the next thing is the physical pliancy. So we're on step 2. So due to this power of the pliancy, where the mind has become more serviceable, and energy that's the cause for physical pliancy courses through your body. And once this energy is pervasively coursed through your entire body, you're free of these physical dysfunctions. And then physical pliancy, which is the remedy for the physical dysfunction, arises. And it saturates the entire body. It's an experience of being as if filled with the power of a serviceable energy. So these are things that are tangible at that point. So I don't think we'll be wondering. The Sangha describes it like this. Due to pliancy's occurrence, energy wind or prana, included among the great elements that is conducive to the arising of physical pliancy, courses through the body. When it flows, you are freed of the physical dysfunction that belongs to the category of afflictions that obstructs your delight in eliminating afflictions. And physical pliancy, the remedy for this affliction, saturates the entire body so that it seems as if you're filled with energy. So we should be on the lookout a little bit. We'll have like small tastes of these things, is what they're saying. They're just subtle and we don't recognize them. So that was step 2, right? Now we're up to the bliss of physical pliancy. So this is physical pliancy has a very pleasant sensation within the body. The bliss of physical pliancy. It's not a mental process. Some people have asserted that, but Sravasti explains this by citing a sutra. If a distinctive physical sensation that is qualified by delight, which we would call maybe bliss, recognize this to be physical pliancy. If your mind is delighted, your body becomes pliant. That's an important point to remember for us, I think. If your mind is delighted, your body becomes pliant. I find this actually true. This is when I learned finally how to relax here, when I was, many years into living here. What was happening for me then was I was learning how to deal with the kind of like, I would have experiences of fibromyalgia, which is always worse in the morning. And I learned how to work with this through meditation, finally. And I recognized when I was doing that I had to just watch the anxiety and all the physical sensations that kind of happen with this. It's kind of like having a cold that has to run its course. And I could do this during the course of part of a meditation session and watch this kind of transpire. And the symptoms of the body would dissipate and the symptoms of the mind would dissipate and the whole thing would like run its course. And I've done this multiple times. And I remember what it was like before I knew how to do that, because I can remember before I had this medication, even back before I lived at the Abbey, it would feel sometimes like I could like stretch for like 45 minutes and have like no relief. Because if you have fibromyalgia, actually you have symptoms from like your head to, I don't think my feet, but the rest of the body. You can have muscle pain all the way through the body, and it can make the body feel like a prison, actually. And so I always used to keep this medication around, which I didn't use much, but it helped me emotionally to know there was some relief if I needed it, right? But then to learn how to work with this with my mind was even better, And so this thing about making the mind delighted, the body becomes pliant, I would say remember that, because my experience in working with this is a lot, that's kind of descriptive, because the meditation I was doing was one that, breathing meditation, that one that we learned where you imagine the light going from like a foot out from your nose, going down through your feet, down a foot. We learned this many years ago when we did 4 establishments of mindfulness. And that's what worked for me to learn how to relax my mind. And plus, I think when I do breathing meditation, I'm very influenced by Thich Nhat Hanh, and he has this thing where breathing in, I calm my body, breathing out, I smile. So sometimes I use that. And then usually I'm not very joyful, and I'm kind of gloomy when I do this, and I know that I don't want to be gloomy, I need to have joy. And I'm sitting there like breathing in, I calm my body, breathing out, I smile, and I'm saying, yeah, right. Breathing in, I calm yeah, right. Who cares? But I just keep doing it, and I make a smile physically because it actually helps you. The Mona Lisa smile will help you lift your mind. And then his next part is dwelling in the present moment. I know this is a wonderful moment. And I've used that for many years, and I've been able to take a mind that's grumpy and make it joyful. And when you make your mind joyful, it's easier to concentrate, and actually it helps your It helps your pain in the body. You know, there's ways to deal with these things, and they're in a lot of the sutras. So yeah, I think that's an important point. But I mean, I'm not saying I have physical pliancy or the bliss of physical pliancy, but there's a level where this has helped me, and I want to share it because I think that it's available to us all. That's what the great masters are saying right here. It's there from the beginning. It's subtle, meaning we're not recognizing it. We should be on the lookout and the lookout. Okay, the fourth step is when this physical pliancy occurs, then due to that energy, there arises a great sense of well-being in your body. And on this basis, there arises in your mind a most exceptional experience of that pleasure, which is the bliss of mental pliancy. Step 4, right? So it's kind of like they're feeding off each other. And Jinlan Rinpa, who wrote the book, he kind of describes the Tsongkhapa's his book on his writings from the great treatise in his book on calm abiding. But he does it in a way that's much easier to read. And he describes this step 3 going to 4. He says, as the initial joy or bliss of physical pliancy increases, it activates a new level of mental bliss. The mental bliss compounds the physical, and they influence each other with increasing intensity. This gets rather potent, and this is a person who probably has a lot of experience. I mean, he was a meditator. The pliancy is very dynamic and gets stronger and stronger, building towards a peak. Eventually, this dynamic pliancy tapers off, and one attains a subtle pliancy that's called special pliancy. So this is actually then what happens, that first bliss, that step 4, the bliss of mental pliancy, is actually too energetic even, and it kind of settles out a little bit to a more subtle type of pliancy that they call special pliancy. So Tsongkhapa explains that this bliss of physical and then mental pliancy, the force of this initial occurrence of pliancy gradually subsides. But it's not a case that the pliancy is exhausted and goes away. Rather, the first experience of this is coarse, and it slightly agitates your mind. And then as it disappears, there's a pliancy that's, they say, tenuous like a shadow. It's more compatible with steady concentration. And this is, so even when they do the 16 steps of mindful, Anapanasati Sutta, the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing, one of the things that you go through is rapture. And then you have to kind of, it's too much energy, so you have to go to something more subtle. This is kind of the same thing. He's saying, once the rapturous delight of your mind has disappeared, the mind stabilizes firmly on the object of meditation, and you achieve mental serenity, which is free of the turbulence caused by great delight. So really, when you get to that bliss of mental pliancy, that pliancy is too energetic, too blissful, too much. And when it tapers off a little bit, then your concentration is even more steady, and boom, serenity. You're there. So the Sangha then explains this. He does a lot in a short amount of words. He says, when this first arises, you experience delight, a great sense of bliss, attention to the unsurpassed delight and manifest delight. So he's talking about the bliss of mental pliancy there, I believe. Following this, the force of pliancy that first arose slowly becomes very refined, and your body becomes endowed with a shadow-like pliancy. You eliminate delight, your mind becomes stabilized with meditative serenity, and you focus on the object of meditation with exceptional serenity. So he's saying the same thing, but other people are like expanding it and making, kind of fleshing it out. Okay, so we started with how is it that we achieve physical, these pliancies, and then when we achieve that, how does it lead to serenity? And that's what we just described. And so when this happens, Maitreya says, you have attained attention. You have attained, so meaning that you've attained serenity. And when you have done this, this is, if you're going to progress from there, this is the first part that is included in access to the first dhyana, the first meditative stabilization. So this is what we sometimes, from Serenity, you go to access concentration, and that you get to the first dhyana. So basically, at Serenity, you've achieved the smallest type of attention on the level of meditative equipoise. And then this is what the second part of tonight is about, these 7 mental contemplations, the very complicated topic that I thought about skipping. But I just kept reading it, and I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad. It's the problem with these things, there's a lot of words to say a little bit. It's really not that complicated once you understand it, but getting to that point was like, there's just so much terminology. I struggled. So anyway, I think that the way His Holiness describes this process is like this. Serenity is concentration that's arisen from meditation. It's accompanied by the bliss of physical and mental pliancy. This is kind of like a definition almost. The mind abides effortlessly, without fluctuation, for as long as we wish on whatever object we've placed it. Many signs occur with attainment of serenity. Because the body and mind are now so flexible and so serviceable, it's actually easy to get physical and mental pliancy to arise when we meditate. So once we've kind of gotten there, I mean, I'm sure you have to sustain it, but it's not like, it sounds easier. The mind is very spacious. You know, His Holiness, he describes things well. And it can abide firmly on its object. Even a loud sound will not interfere with concentration at this point. And the mind is free of the 5 hindrances. I actually looked through volume 4 and just put in 5 hindrances and read through all the book that we've reviewed. And it was a really good way to understand this topic better. So I would kind of recommend that. It doesn't take that long, and you kind of, if you just stop at each one and kind of figure out what they're talking about, you can get a sense of the progression. Because I get kind of lost in a lot of the terminology and words, so I picked this one thing and like, what's happening with that all the way through? Everything kind of fell into place a lot easier for me then. So once you're at that point of serenity, you have all this, now you've got mental and physical pliancy on board, you've got serenity, then in between sessions, actually your afflictions don't rise as often or as strongly, which would be awesome. They may arise in the break times, but they're much weaker and they're more easy to subdue. The craving for, this is His Holiness speaking, the craving for sensual pleasures is decreased. Sleep can easily be transformed into meditation, and wonderful experiences may occur during sleep. That's kind of like an advertisement. And even after rising from meditation, some degree of the physical and mental pliancy remain. So then our chapter explains these 3 qualities of serenity, or calm abiding, or shamatha. So the first is so-called non-conceptuality. And this we have to be careful because it's actually not what we're usually thinking of there. Here is talking about a non-discursive type of stability of the mind. It's not, there's a stability that comes with serenity where there's this absence of distracting thoughts. It's not like the kind of non-conceptuality that we talk about when we talk about direct perception. It's not talking about that here. We're not talking about direct perception where there's no conceptual appearance or generic image. You're not having that conceiving of something through a medium of an image. It's actually a kind of non-conceptuality that's it's saying that the mind can actually stay on the object for as long as we wish, and it's not getting distracted because it's free of restlessness, right? So it doesn't conceptualize on other objects. It's like there. So it's non-conceptual in that sense. It's a non-conceptuality just because it's so stable. So that's the first quality of serenity that His Holiness describes. The next is clarity. And in this context, it's just talking about being free of laxity. So the object is clearly appearing. Clarity relates to the vividness of the mind, actually. So the object appears vivid, but it's more the mind. And then the third quality of serenity is benefit. And in this context, it's a benefit that this physical and mental pliancy have been achieved. That's of great benefit. So then the chapter then goes into that there are still things that can get in the way. Even once you've achieved serenity, there are these 4 afflictions that can interfere both with maintaining your serenity and also improving your levels of concentration, because of course there's levels beyond serenity. You've got the 4 form concentrations and the 4 formless concentrations. So these 4 afflictions that interfere, the first one is attachment. And they can be like attachment to the pleasure of serenity, or whatever level of absorption that a person has attained. So they're talking like beyond serenity. This can happen, and what would happen there, the reason this would be a negative, is you're attached to the serenity, the pleasure of it, and actually you don't bother to develop your wisdom. You're just kind of hanging out with the bliss. You're content to remain in blissful concentration, and you let go of the opportunity actually to realize emptiness because you don't develop your wisdom. They're always warning us about that. And people do make this mistake, obviously. Then the second affliction that can arise is arrogance, because we think we're superior to others. We've attained serenity. We're awesome. We think we're awesome. And that would actually then distract you, maybe from deepening your concentration and your wisdom. So yeah, my friend Linda Waterfall had this teacher who spent 2 years meditating in a cave in India. He was Hindu. And when he came out, one of the first things he did, and this is a story you hear in the Buddhist scriptures too, is he got angry at somebody and screamed at him. And then he actually quit talking. He never spoke after that. He taught a lot. He used a chalkboard for the rest of his life. But 2 years, and the first thing he does, come out and anger overtook him. We hear about those stories. So, you aren't as far as you want to be with just serenity. That's the point. The third affliction he brings up is ignorance. And this is where people make the mistake of they think that this deep level of concentration actually is liberation. And they make that mistake, and they're actually still bound in samsara. And then at the time of death, they actually think they're going to nirvana, and boom, they realize they're going to be reborn again in samsara. That would be a major bummer. That's obviously happened. We've heard that warning many times. And the fourth one is wrong views. If you have wrong views, they could stop you from developing your wisdom fully, the view of emptiness. You have to have correct views to do that. So those are the 4 afflictions that can interfere with maintaining and improving the quality of concentration. Okay, so then when you go through those 9 stages of sustained attention that occur before serenity, right? And even after you first attain serenity, initially, the object is a conceptual appearance. It's perceived by a conceptual mental consciousness. And this is why I wanted these first 2 slides. So we'll put up the first one. So as you continue with your meditation and you've reached serenity, your serenity becomes more refined. And there's a point where it's so vivid that the object is known non-conceptually. And at this point, it's no longer a conceptual appearance. And this is then called a phenomenal source. So in this first slide, this is the divisions of forms. And the word on the left, I don't know what happened to it. It should say form. It says Foriti. I don't know why that says that. Anyway, form is what I photocopied. PNFs.
That's how they looked on the photocopy.
Yeah, I don't know. This is what I photocopied. But at any rate, it doesn't matter. If you divide form, there's all the sense powers, the sense faculties, the subtle material like in your eye that makes it so you can see, and your ear, and your nose, and your tongue, and your body sense. That's the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divisions of forms. The next ones are what you actually see, visual form, visual fonts, visual forms, sound, odors, taste, touch, tangible object. And then form for mental consciousness. That's the last one on there. Form for a mental consciousness. So this is how you divide form. This is from Jeffrey Hopkins, and it's his chart 11 in Meditation on Emptiness. Now go to the next slide. It's all right if they're not perfect. This one isn't so important. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just get lost when they start talking about this particular phenomenal source and all this. I'm like lost. The form for a mental consciousness. Basically, so then I go to Jeffrey Hopkins. So he first gives us how you divide forms, and then he divides forms for a mental consciousness. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so we have forms arisen from aggregations. So these subtle particles that people see with their mental consciousness. Space forms. Appearance of clear space only to a mental consciousness. This is also from his book, Chart 19. Form arising from promises, which is what both Vaibhashika and Prasangika believe, that our vows have a kind of form for a mental consciousness. And then imaginary forms, like dream images. And then the one that we're talking about here, form for one with meditative power. That's what we're talking about here. So it's not a conceptual appearance is the whole point. Okay, you can take that down. I don't want to spend any time on it. That's as much as I can say. I would direct you to Meditation on Emptiness and a Geshe for anything more. Okay, but Geshe Sopa then clarifies this, which I was like, I really wonder. I spent time on this last time in the last review on this point of like conceptual appearances and this and that. And here, Geshe Sopa clarifies that he says all shamatha meditation, which all serenity meditation, except for the direct realization of emptiness, beginning on the path of seeing, is a conceptual or discursive in the sense of relying on a universal, which means a generic image, a conceptual appearance. Basically, he's saying that until you get to the path of seeing, all of these things are conceptual appearances. And the first time you have this form for the meditative consciousness, that's what he's basically saying, is with the direct realization of emptiness. Then your serenity meditation is direct. That's how I understand this. It doesn't say that in volume 4, but his Geshe Sopa, he explains Tsongkhapa's, chapters on serenity, right? And this is what that's from, so that would be his 4th volume. Okay, now we can go to the 3rd slide. I wanted to do this. Okay, we started at 6, and we have time. I've always wanted to do this since you did it some years ago. This is the Tonka that we got rid of. So sad. Well, we gave it away, right?
We didn't get rid of it. We offered it to Venerable Thubten.
Oh.
Yeah.
We offered it. Okay, great. Anyway, we no longer have it. But that's all right. We have this drawing. I just like this drawing a lot. So this one is a little colored in, so it's easier to explain. And you have this in your book. Let me see. Let me get there. Okay, not confuse myself. On page 166. This diagram is in our book. And so, it explains, and it's numbered, it has like, puts numbers up to 33, and it explains the different parts. But the one thing I never really got before is I colored some of these things to make it more apparent to me. So number 1 is, can you see the number 1 over there at the very bottom where that house is? And it's got a circle around it in blue. That is the first bend of the 6 bends that happen in this drawing. So there's the blue bend, the red bend, the brown bend, the green bend, the orange bend, and then it kind of goes into yellow there. So there are 6 bends. These represent the 6 powers. The first bend at number 1 signifies the power of hearing. We hear our spiritual mentor's instructions on how to cultivate serenity. And then number 2, which has a box or a diamond around it, right next to that. All the ones with diamonds in this drawing are these stages of sustained attention. And I put numbers next to them so I could keep track. I need footnotes, right? So that one is the first stage. First stage of sustained attention, called placing the mind. And I'm just reading the text now. I mean, there's nothing to, you can just look at the picture. And this is attained by the power of hearing the instructions. So then number 3 there is the yellow rope that the monk is holding. The rope is you'll see it in a number of as you progress along this, you see the yellow rope. That's representing mindfulness. And it ends, you don't see it anymore really after that, when you get into that green bend, it's kind of gone. But at any rate, the rope represents the power of mindfulness. And then in his other hand, at the very beginning there, he's got number 4, he's got a taming hook. That's the power of introspective awareness. So I wrote introspection there. And he's carrying that pretty far along. But it changes at the very end. Once you get to the very last picture at the top, that's now the sword of wisdom up there at 32. Yeah, 32. But back down here at number 4, that's where we're at. And then number 5 is this flame over there on the left, at the bottom there, where the blue bend ends. And it's kind of the largest flame, supposedly. And this is, the flame is found from this point until you get all the way up to the 7th stage of sustained attention. And you don't see the flame anymore after a while. Like in that green stage there, the flame is the last one you see. This is, it's no longer present then. It decreases in size. And what this is indicating is there's decreasing amounts of effort that are needed to apply mindfulness and introspective alertness or awareness as we progress through the stages. And so then when you get up there in the green, actually when you hit number 24, which is, okay, in the beginning of the orange, you see that diamond with the 24 up there? It has a 7 next to it. Right there, you're at the 7th stage of sustained attention. So that flame is like gone. It's like so much easier now. Like you don't have much trouble with your mindfulness and introspective awareness. So that flame is representing that, and it's decreasing as you move through these stages. And then we're back down at the bottom there again where the elephant is at number 6. The elephant represents the mind, and it's black at the beginning, and as it moves through, it gets lighter and lighter as you see the elephant there. Eventually at the end, you see it, at the very end, it's white. So the mind, this is representing, the black color represents laxity. So your laxity is decreasing as you move through here. And then we're down there, the monkey at number 7, we're in that blue bend right near that first flame. The monkey symbolizes distraction in general and then sometimes restlessness. in particular. And the black color indicates restlessness in particular. And then here, at this point, the monk is chasing the elephant and the monkey. They're in front of him because he's got a monkey mind. It indicates that he has very little control over laxity and distraction that plague his mind. So there we are at the very beginning. We all know this quite well. We have a lot of experience in this. Then you get to number 8, which is on the left there, where the blue becomes red for the bends. And you see that 8 red with a red circle around it. This is the second bend, and this represents the second power of the 6 powers. That's the power of reflection on the meditation object, which leads to the second stage of sustained attention, which is number 9, which is where you see the monk next. Can you see that okay? On the red bend where you see the monk, number 9 with the little 2 under it. That's the second stage. This is continual placement. This is where you attain that. The length of focus on your meditation object has increased at that point. And then number 10 is right above that flame where it says sense, where I wrote sense objects, number 10. This is, number 10 is exposure to the 5 sense objects, object of sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. These are still inciting restlessness and hinder your concentration, so that's why they're in this drawing. And now, at this point, at number 11, which is right after that flame on the red bend, you have still, the elephant is still in front of the monk or the meditator, but he's actually walking now instead of running. In the first picture he was running, and now in the second picture he's walking. The mind is beginning to calm down. And the elephant gradually turns white. So you see a little bit of white on his head. This represents a little more clarity of the mind. Because remember, the elephant is the mind. So a little more clarity on the object and an increased focus. And then we get to number 12, which is on the right side of the picture there, a brown circle. We're starting the next bend, which is the third power, which is the power of mindfulness. This leads to achieving the third and fourth stages, which are all on that brown bend. You'll see number 12, which is on, 12 was the bend. 13 is the first, you see the monk there with the number 13 and a 3. That's the third stage of sustained attention, which is called repeated placement. You've attained that. The meditator has now lassoed the elephant. You see his mindfulness lasso has lassoed the elephant. He can bring his attention back to the object. That's what the lasso is representing there. When it's been interrupted, it gets interrupted by coarse laxity or coarse restlessness at this time. And at this point, it doesn't say that yet. So that's 14. Okay, now we're on 14. That elephant has a rabbit on top of it, a hare rabbit, colored in orange, so you can see it a little easier on top of the elephant there at the beginning of the brown bend. Now the meditator can distinguish between gross and subtle laxity. The hare represents subtle laxity, or the rabbit. And at this point, number 15, you see the monkey there. Both the monkey and the elephant in that point, they're looking backwards, which is indicating that the mind is gaining strength over the faults. And it represents the mind's ability to return to the meditation object after recognizing mental wandering. So that's where they're looking back. That's what that represents. That was 15. Now we get up to 16, and the monk is still holding his lasso of mindfulness, still lassoed his mind of the elephant. And the number 16 has a 4 next to it, because now you're at the fourth stage of sustained attention called close placement. And I think actually that a lot of people reach this stage. A lot of meditators reach this stage, I think, actually. you're able to bring the mind back to the object more quickly. Then number 17 is the end of that bend, it's beginning of the next bend, where the brown goes into green. On the left, you see a 17 with a green circle around it. This is the fourth bend, and it represents the fourth power, which is the power of introspective awareness or alertness. And this leads to the attainment of the fifth and sixth stages, which are shown on that green bend. And then number 18, which is the monkey, right after that flame. You see that? Okay. The monkey at number 18 is representing the restlessness of the mind is being curbed now. And so the monkey is getting whiter, because remember the monkey was representing distraction and in particular restlessness. So we're getting a handle on that, and we go to 19, which is actually what I circled in the green circle up there, the big 19 on the left. The monkey is gathering fruit from the tree to the side of the meditation path. That's what's happening there. There's a monkey in the middle of that. It's hard to see in this drawing, but right above the 19, not the one I drew, but the one in the original drawing, that's a monkey in the middle of all that. And what he's doing is he's gathering fruit, and this represents the distinction between virtuous thoughts that arise when doing stabilizing meditation and at other times. When thoughts arise during stabilizing meditation, even if they're virtuous, they need to be suppressed because they're distracting you. Even a virtuous thought should be let go of. You're trying to have single-pointed concentration on your object, and you're getting distracted by something virtuous. So even when virtuous thoughts arise, you want to let go of those and go back to your object. Whereas other times, you want to keep them in your mind. And then number 20, we're at the elephant again. And here is the first time where the meditator is actually in front of the elephant. The elephant's behind. He's no longer chasing the wild elephant of the mind, but it's now leading it because laxity and restlessness have decreased so much. That's number 20. And I drew the hair there again, although they don't comment on it, but you can see the colors changing of the rabbit on the monkey there at number 20. Then 21 is the diamond with the 5 next to it. You're now at the 5th stage of sustained attention called taming. This is attained when coarse laxity and coarse restlessness are no longer problems. So now the meditator begins to lead the elephant, which is his mind, right? And the monkey follows. The mind is more controlled, although the meditator must goad the element. So you goad the elephant. He's got his goading stick, and he's goading the elephant there in that picture, whatever they called that. Okay, then number 22 is another diamond with a 6 next to it, and we've moved to the next elephant. This is now the 6th stage of sustained attention, where you've attained that, and that's the stage called pacifying. So now all resistance or dislike for single-pointed meditation is gone, and so the rabbit is gone now. You saw him on the one before at number 20, but when you get to 22, the rabbit's gone. So the subtle laxity is gone. That would be amazing. That would be hard. Then you get to 23, which is where the green turns into the orange for the bends. This is the 5th bend, which is the 5th power of the 6. And this is the power of effort. And this is going to lead to the 7th and 8th stages of sustained attention. So this is the orange bend of the road there. And we get to number 24, which has a 7 next to it. And this is the 7th stage of sustained attention, thoroughly pacifying. That's been attained. It's now difficult for subtle laxity and subtle restlessness to arise. Because remember, there's only 9 stages, right? So we're at 7. If they do arise, they're easily eliminated with small amounts of effort, which is why there's no flames left anymore. And the monkey stands behind the meditator and pays homage to the meditator. And the monkey was the distraction and the restlessness. So they're like really small now. And then you get to 25, which is the elephant, the mind, in the middle of that orange bend. It's completely white. The monkey is no longer present. This symbolizes that by applying a little mindfulness and introspective awareness at the beginning of the meditation session, the meditator can enter an interrupted state of single-pointed concentration in which laxity, restlessness, and distractions do not have the power to interrupt concentration, and you're close to the 8th stage, which is the next one, the number 26, with the number 8 next to it. So that's the 8th stage of sustained attention, making single-pointed. You've attained that. Laxity and restlessness are not able to interrupt concentration. So focus is now uninterrupted. At the beginning of the session, the meditator can immediately apprehend the meditation object and continuously maintain concentration on it. Kind of like turning on a TV and it just stays on. We're that easy. Now we're at 27, which is on the left there, at the end of the orange, going into that yellow bend. But actually, the bend here, I'm not sure it goes very far. So that's why that 27 on the left there. This is the 6th bend, represents the power of complete familiarity through which the 9th stage is attained. And then you get to 28, which is above. You see that on the left, up a little higher, the 28 with the 9 next to it. That is the 9th stage of sustained attention, which is called placing in equipoise. You've attained that. Now here, the elephant is resting. You can see the meditator there. The elephant is resting next to the meditator who sits at ease. It's a little hard to see in the picture, but that is the meditator sitting there with the elephant. And the mind now effortlessly stays on the meditation object without any interruption during the entire session. And so the yellow that comes out of the meditator's heart is actually a rainbow. That's what's represented next, and it goes through the next. And when you get to 29, which is the flying meditator, 29 says, the meditator rides the elephant along the rainbow path en route to serenity. The meditator experiences the bliss of physical and mental pliancy. And 30 is the elephant and the mind, and the meditator riding the meditator is riding the elephant. Said that. Serenity, number 30 is serenity is attained, and 31 is there too, mental joy is present. Then at 32 is the very last picture of the meditator on the elephant. And that 32 is the monk rides the completely pacified elephant. The mind is now completely pacified. By attaining the union of serenity and insight with emptiness as the object, the monk holds the sword of wisdom. Ignorance, the root of samsara, is now in the process of being cut. So now that's what he's holding in his hand. And the number 33, those flames, these now are representing extremely powerful mindfulness and wisdom, represented by the flames. The meditator continues to meditate on emptiness. With his meditation informed by bodhicitta, he eradicates all defilements from the mind. Yay. We did it. That's, I think, awesome. Let's do it. Let's do. Okay, I've lost where I'm at. Now I need to organize myself. Okay, page 8. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's that. Page 9. Oh, okay, I see what I've done. Okay, so now we switch gears. Now we're in the hard chapter, I think. We're now at the beginning of chapter 8 in the text. This is called the Meditative Absorptions. And First in this chapter, I think it's good to talk about a little bit of terminology. It took me a while to sort this out. Venerable, and I didn't look into the Pali, but Venerable has a footnote where she's talking about the terminology in the Sanskrit tradition in this chapter. The terminology in this chapter is from the Sanskrit tradition, and it may differ from the Pali tradition. But even in the Sanskrit tradition, some of these words are used differently, and I just want to make people aware of this. When you look in the Princeton Dictionary and you look up the word dhyana, which in Pali is jhana, which is samten, right? The Sanskrit, that means meditative absorption. And Venerable uses it in this book sometimes that way and sometimes not. Venerable tends to separate out the 4 form realm concentrations. She will often call those meditative stabilization, and she'll call the 4 formless ones meditative absorptions. But when you look in the Princeton Dictionary, the word dhyana, and I don't think there's any contradiction. I just think sometimes they combine different words and the words are used differently. But I think this explains it well. And as I looked through this and looked in different places, it actually works. But basically, the Princeton Dictionary says that this term, dhyana, or meditative absorption, but let's use dhyana because I think it's better. This can refer both to the practice that leads you to full absorption and to the state of full absorption itself. And it's divided into 2 broad types. Meditative absorption, associated with the realm of subtle materiality, which means the form realm, and meditative absorption, or dhyana, of the immaterial realm, or the formless realm. And these have these long Sanskrit names. Then when you look in the Uma dictionary, Jeffrey translates samten or dhyana as concentration, and he divides it into the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th concentrations, which we oftentimes hear as in Pali as the 1st, 2nd, 3rd jhana. You never hear about the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th jhana. So they use jhana usually for these first 4 formless realm concentrations. But even in Jeffrey's book, he uses this expression arupa, which means formless, dhyanas. Arupa dhyana, which is formless dhyanas, which is formless concentrations. So they actually all use the same terms, but sometimes they use different ones. But Venerable has tended to, generally she splits them out, but not every time, because I found instances in this book where she didn't. She would use meditative absorption for all 8 of them, form and formless, but generally she splits them out. Jeffrey, on the other hand, uses the word samadhi for meditative stabilization, and he uses the word samapati for absorption or meditative absorption, and he also uses it as attainment. But the way Venerable and His Holiness explain this, and this is on page 212, she'll say the form realm consists of 4 levels of dhyana, meditative stabilization. I'm putting that in brackets. And then, while the formless realms have 4 levels of meditative absorption. And that's how she generally uses these words. But there's a little bit of, you can see why you can use both. Sometimes they hyphenate them, they'll call it dhyana samadhi. So anyway, back to the book though. So that's just kind of the terminology. So the purpose, why do we gain this serenity? We gain it in order to gain insight, and then we need to unite serenity and insight. And this then empowers the mind, and we can use that empowered mind either to temporarily suppress afflictions, which is what most of this chapter is about, or to completely eliminate afflictions. So serenity is actually a tool. It's not an end in itself, which is why we have the stories of the meditators coming out of their caves and screaming at people because they're reminding us that serenity is a tool. So once you have attained this serenity, you can follow one of 2 paths. One is mundane and one is super mundane. And it's interesting to me, and I never quite got this before, and maybe Geshe Sopa helped me here, so I'll say what he describes. He describes these 2 paths as 2 types of insight or vipassana. There's the mundane path that's going to lead you to higher levels of attainment, these of concentration, these meditative, higher levels of meditative absorption. It also can lead you to, the mundane path could also lead you to birth in the form or formless realm. It also could, for some people, lead them to achieve the first 5 of the 6 super knowledges. Remember what those are? Mundane, the first 5 are mundane abilities, which are, so you don't have to be a Buddhist. You just get this level of concentration and you do the right things and you can gain these first 5 of the 6 super knowledges, which are supernormal powers, that's 1, divine ear, that's 2, understanding the minds of others, recollection of past lives, and the divine eye. The 6th super knowledge is actually a super mundane realization. That's the destruction of pollutants. So the mundane path could include, if somebody cultivates these, they have to be cultivated, to the first 5 of the 6 super knowledges. So those are these 3 things that you can attain. You could attain a certain level of concentration, meditative absorption. You could obtain birth in a certain realm, form or formless realm, or some people would attain the first 5 of the 6 super knowledges. So how does that happen for the mundane path? Well, you have a mundane insight, actually. And I actually think this is what, I was going to skip this whole section, but I found this actually to be kind of useful. This is described as contemplating the drawbacks or the grossness of the lower states of meditative absorption, because you've actually attained this higher one and you can see the lower ones, and so you either see the drawbacks and you're going forward, or you've got the next one and you want to sustain it and really make it there because you see the benefits. It's more peaceful. The higher states of concentration are more peaceful. Within cyclic existence, though, why do these happen? You've temporarily suppressed afflictions. So it's actually requiring a type of insight. And this was what I didn't quite get before, and I've really been thinking about this, and it became much more interesting to me. A type of insight is needed to suppress temporarily afflictions on this mundane path. And so the super mundane path, then you're using Serenity, this tool, as a basis for cultivating insight. But now you're looking into the Four Noble Truths, the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, so, and especially selflessness and emptiness. And this now is a uniquely Buddhist path. Now, this, non-Buddhists aren't doing that. And this is what leads us to nirvana and full awakening. So you can use Serenity for either of these, right? One thing that I was, it's funny when you read the book, you're like, do I want to say this? Do I not? And I was like, I had this as like, then it kind of started to make sense to me. His Holiness says, understanding these teachings on the meditative absorptions provides a roadmap for us to follow, and it helps us to actually practice in a steady and sequential manner, and it helps us more accurately evaluate our practice and our experiences. And I was like, I'm leaving that out. And then I thought about this as I started understanding what they were saying here, and this part in particular, which I'd always kind of glazed over in the past. My eyes, I was just like 7 mental contemplations. And I wasn't even going to, really when I started working on this, I was like, I'm leaving that out. And then I just like, well, maybe I should at least look at it. Okay, so, but it got interesting when especially this, what Venerable Geshe Sopa said here. He was saying, some people say that insight or vipassana removes afflictions from the root, whereas shamatha or serenity suppresses them temporarily, which is what I thought was the case. But he said, actually, Tsongkhapa makes it clear that this is not entirely correct. It's actually, serenity does not suppress the afflictions, even temporarily, he says, without being combined with mundane insight. Tsongkhapa stresses the necessity of shamatha or serenity for any type of insight. And to illustrate this, they explain what we're learning here, this mundane path of how you actually get from serenity to the first dhyana. And they explain this with this most what I thought most boring topic of the sixth type of what he calls attention, but we call mental contemplations, which are an antidote to attachment in the desire realm. So basically, why is this interesting to me? Well, actually, when I look at my own experience, I'm not trying to get from serenity to dhyana, but I used to think, oh, it's my concentration that's helping me with this anger. Like I've literally had times where I'm like, my mind is out to lunch, but I have enough wherewithal to like work on it. And sometimes I will use concentration to work on it. Well, like, I don't want to think about this. I'm not going to suppress it in an unhealthy way, but it's overpowering my mind right now and I need a vacation. I need to get away from this. As His Holiness has said, when he teaches why we need to do non-conceptual meditation, we need to get away from conceptuality. Our thoughts are driving us nuts. We're believing everything we think. We titled a book that, right? Don't believe everything you think. So we're just driving ourselves crazy with our thoughts sometimes. And so actually you can actually concentrate the mind on something, like you take a 2-year-old and you put them in a timeout or you distract a 2-year-old, right? That's how I work with 2-year-olds. When they're acting in a way I don't want them to act, I just distract them to something more interesting. That's kind of what I do when my mind's going out to lunch. Like, let's just put it on the breath or something, and I'm just going to get away from that. I need to get the mind more calm because as I learned from Venerable Chodron when I was so out to lunch, you can't use any of the antidotes when you have a boiling pot of water for a mind. You've got to have a little more clarity, a little more calm. You've got to be able to see through that water and see what's happening in there, right? And so I actually think we are doing this. We're actually using insight because I know I don't want to be angry. I know I don't want that state of mind. So when I reflected on this, and I can think of like one time, like, I don't know if that was the time when I went ballistic when we were building the Shanti cabin, like the day before I was going to full ordination in Taiwan. And then Jampel drops me this project and takes off. And I went like bonkers. I'll never forget this day. And I then went out, and I can't remember if this is that day, but I have done this a few times where I'll just go out in the grass, because I love the grasses here, the original grasses before we started tearing them up. And I would just like cry and stare at a piece of grass and just stare at it until my mind calmed down. And then I came back, I did something like that day. And then I came back and Venerable goes, "Oh, you're working so well with your mind." I was like, are you kidding me? I think I said that to her. Like, well, I had calmed myself down. It was so embarrassing. I had so much shame. Joe was here, Pat and Joe. I'll never forget that day. It was one of my better days. And Venerable was like complimenting me, which I was even more ashamed of, actually. Like, that's practice? You're calling that practice? Do you know what I just did? But actually, when I think about this is what I was doing in my level. I'm not going like from serenity, but I'm like using some insight. Like, I know I don't want to have this state of mind, and I know I got to do something. What the heck can I do with this mind? I'll cry to get some of the emotion washed through. Keep things moving inside, right? Emotionally, you can't like freeze up or you're stuck. And I'll stare at this piece of grass so that I can like quit thinking. And then wait for the storm to pass, right? Because as Venerable says, you can only hold some of these emotions for like 20 minutes. So if you can just like hang in there through the storm. So in a way, that's a kind of insight. I know I don't want to be angry. I know I don't want this. I know I don't want that. And I use some level of concentration. Like, to me, it's like a perfect thing. Like, it's just I'm just not doing this. It is very mundane. And it's very useful. And I think that I don't think that's incorrect. I think I will talk to somebody about that someday and see. But whatever. So this is mundane. Well, that's why it's interesting to me. And I'm like, now I'm interested in the topic finally. I'm like, I have to relate things to my own experience. I do that with all the teachings, and it's the only way it makes any usefulness to me. So I'm not so interested in these form and formless realms, I have to say, but I'm interested in working with my afflictions. And when you read it, when you go through the 5 hindrances, all you're doing for a lot of that is, well, actually, when you get to access, concentration, and serenity, you've dealt with these afflictions. You have to suppress them to get to serenity. Access, concentration, you suppress them even more, but it's not so stable. That's why you want this first dhyana. When I read that was the first time I'm like, okay, for the first time in my life, I have some interest in this. I was like, access concentration is fine with me. You can realize emptiness with that. It's all I need. I'm good to go. But no, actually, I read in this book by looking at those 5 hindrances that, well, access concentration isn't so stable. It'd be more stable to get to this first dhyana. So now I have a new goal. A little more interest in these realms that I never had much interest in. So what are these? Samsara has 3 realms: desire, form, formless realm. The desire realm, we're all so distracted to external objects like sight, sounds, taste, touch, whatever. The form realm, the body still have form, a body. It's more subtle, has these 4 levels of dhyana, 4 levels of meditative stabilization. And then we have the formless realm. So we have these 3 realms: form, desire, form, and formless. In the formless realm, they don't have a coarse body, and they have their own 4 levels of meditative absorption. And this Holiness says, we live in the desire realm and we know it exists, but how can we establish the existence of the form and formless realms? And before this week, I would have said, who cares? I don't really care. You might, because your name is Thubten, but now I care. And he said, one way to do this is to examine our states of mind. Our mental state in the desire realm is much grosser, and you can tell by my stories. That's pretty gross. But, working with anger, I think, can lead you to a lot of realizations, actually. You can look at your concentration in this. You can look at emptiness in this. Because, anyway, there are some benefits to working with it beyond just that. But anyway, they are mental states that are quite gross. And why? Because we're so distracted and obsessed with these external objects and our senses. They're just dragging us around, which is why the meditator was being pulled around by that, right? That's why they do that drawing like that. And even when we develop a little bit of concentration, we can see that our mind is more peaceful and more stable. And then when you enhance that to the point of serenity, you've got a really stable, calm, and subtle mind. And so just from our own experience, we can infer, I think would be the word, that there are progressively deeper states of meditative absorption. I think that's not too big of a stretch. We know just in working on our computers and reading a book, some days we can concentrate and read a very difficult passage. Some days it's like, forget it. So even just in our day-to-day life, we have all levels of concentration. And we have levels of memory, like I can do 8 + 8, I can do it today. I can do my times tables today. Some days, maybe not. Anyway, so we know we have different levels of concentration, so it's not that big of a stretch. And so we then can infer from that there are actual beings who have these levels of concentration. So there are these different realms. Does that work for you? A little bit more for me this time. Well, if there's different levels of concentration, and somebody can get up to that level, and you're reborn, maybe. It's possible. That's what he's saying. So then there's more terminology. So we have these 3 realms that we just described. There's also, so those are realms. There's also 3 spheres of consciousness. There's the desire sphere of consciousness, the form sphere of consciousness. Sphere, can you understand that? And the formless sphere of consciousness, all with their Sanskrit words. So these spheres of consciousness, now they're talking about mental states, not realms of existence. Realms are planes of existence where sentient beings are born. Mental states are mental states, and you have spheres of consciousness related to a mental state. Usually, when you're in a certain realm, you have that sphere of consciousness, usually. But what happens here is a human being is in the desire realm with their desire sphere of consciousness, and they start working on this, and they actually develop a form sphere of consciousness while they're in the desire realm. That's what happens. When you attain serenity, a human being's meditating mind becomes a form sphere of consciousness, although their body remains in the desire realm. They have a desire realm body and a form sphere of consciousness. So when you are, now that we're all enthused to develop the first dhyana at least, when you're doing this, there are two parts to doing this. There's the preparation stage, which is sometimes called access of that dhyana, and there's the actual dhyana itself. That's when you've completed the preparation stages. So if you want to attain this first dhyana, you first have to accomplish the 7 preparatory stages. There's 7 preparations. And these are all first dhyana spheres of consciousness. The mental states are all in that sphere of consciousness. So to attain the first dhyana, you have to get through the 7 preparatory stages. So the first one of those 7 is this initial level of serenity, and you're called a mere beginner. And then, it's just like they've overlapped these 2 charts. You have the 7 mental contemplations. The first 6 of those are the next 7 preparatory stages, the next 6 preparatory stages. So for the 7 preparatory stages, the first one is the serenity, and then you have the first 6 of the 7 mental conscious contemplations, or what Geshe Sopa calls attentions. They're just overlapping 2 charts, basically. It's one sequence when you think about it, but they made this terminology so confounding. It's not that hard, especially when we'll get through this. It's not that hard. But in this situation, your serenity is a form sphere consciousness. So that's the level of consciousness or mental state that you have. And if it was me doing it, I have a desire realm body, right? With that kind of consciousness. And then you strengthen your serenity by repeated meditation, and then you proceed into these 7 mental contemplations. So you've got the serenity, which is the first of the 7 preparations, and now you're going to go, I'm just going to talk now about the 7 types of mental contemplation, because I think it's easier. Combining these 2 is just like a nightmare. I don't know why they do it, but anyway, they did. So anyway, here we are. So I'll list them first. The 7 types of mental contemplation are mental contemplations of. There's just the titles: discernment of characteristics, and they're all in our book. Arisen from belief, isolation, delight or withdrawal, analysis, final training, and the result of final training, which is the actual first dhyana, which is why they can't call it a preparatory stage, because now you're there. So that's why they got this second list. And so the first 6 are causal, and the 7th is the result, basically. And these first 6 are actually all analytical meditative states. And when we're doing this for a mundane path, with our mundane insight, we're understanding the grossness and peacefulness with these mental contemplations. Or if you're doing it for the Four Noble Truths, 4 truths, you're using them to cultivate understanding of the 4 truths. And then that's going to be a super mundane path. Sorry. So when we're working on the mundane path, the grossness and peacefulness, what they're referring to there are the disadvantages of these lower sphere of consciousness compared to the next one above. It's more peaceful. So you're more attracted to it once you contemplate these things. But unless you contemplate it, it's not going to happen, right? And what is the point of this? Well, for both Buddhists and non-Buddhists, this is how they deepen their meditative states. And both serenity and insight are involved because it takes insight to analyze the grossness and the peacefulness of these realms. So that makes it really kind of crazy to say that meditation is non-conceptual in a way, when you think about it, because even the Pali tradition does it this way, I'm pretty sure. They have the whole thing, I think, also about grossness and peacefulness, but I didn't read about theirs. Anyway, at the conclusion of that analysis of these steps, you have a serenity that focuses single-pointedly on the relative grossness and peacefulness, and that's what you're doing. So Geshe Sopa explains this. It's important to note that no matter how definite your discernment of the faults of the desire realm and the good qualities of the first realm of the formless realm, until you focus on that with analytical knowledge, with serenity, you need the analytical knowledge with serenity. You can't suppress the afflictions, because that's what you're doing, actually. And no matter how much you cultivate serenity, if you don't analyze with discernment, you also can't suppress the afflictions. So you need both. And he makes this, somehow, he makes things so clear. So you actually need both of these to suppress the afflictions of the desire realm. You're not going to just be able to, and when I thought about that, it made sense to me with my own example. Like, if I didn't have any analytical meditation, why would I bother to get rid of my anger? I might think it's a good thing. I might let it, like actually another good story, our first building, Gotami, the time when Venerable got out the hook and wouldn't even let me meet with the general contractor because I had not lived here very long. I was going to kind of deal with this problem with him the same way I had been taught. I was going to be assertively angry and go in there and meet with them. She wouldn't even let me meet with them. She got out the hook and whoop, not going. So I needed a little bit of analytical meditation to work that one out, to think that wasn't a beneficial. It's all about advantages and disadvantages of these things. I hadn't really seen the disadvantages of interacting in that way. I really learned it on this last project. I really saw the disadvantages, and I worked it out. That's one thing I'm very happy with about this. Anyway, so, that's analysis of type. If I had just worked on, I would have been like the guy in the cave. If I had just worked on my serenity and not really thought about, the advantages and disadvantages of these things, I would have just come out of my room and screamed at the guy and thought I was doing a good thing. Okay, so here's the one who made this all understandable. Jina Putra. He summarizes these 7 mental contemplations in his commentary on Asanga. And so I'm going to read how he did this, because it just ties it all up and it makes it really easy to understand. So this first stage of the seven mental contemplations, as we're talking about, the first one is discernment of characteristics. Here's what we're doing. We're bringing about a comprehensive understanding of what is to be abandoned and what is to be attained. Like, maybe I don't want this hindrance of malice. Maybe I don't want this hindrance of lust, or, all the various hindrances, right? So you're looking at what's to be abandoned and what's to be attained. And then you direct the mind towards those abandonments and those attainments. That's the first one. Discernment of characteristics. I'm understanding that, maybe going in and talking with this person with this much anger in the mind isn't going to be fruitful. Maybe this level of meditative ability with these hindrances that are still easily arising, not so suppressed, is maybe it'd be better to have that next one up where it's like, I got a better handle on this. Then the next one is, number 2, is following that first one, you have arisen from belief, because you actually take up the practice. Then the third one is what they call the mental contemplation of isolation. And now you get into abandoning these grades of afflictions that are affiliated with the different levels, the different realms, actually. So that was the third one. You abandon the great grades. And then the fourth one, the mental contemplation of delight. Now you abandon the middle grades. So you're just getting rid of afflictions, going through the great grades, the middle grades. You go to the fifth step, analysis. Places the mind in a state free of exaggerated pride. There you think you've attained your goal, but you haven't. So you need to, you're pretty far along, and you've got rid of a lot of afflictions, and you're like about ready to take a dead end, and you need to get back on the path. And then the sixth one is the mental contemplation of final training. Now you abandon these small grades of afflictions. And the seventh is the result of the final training. You experience the fruit. You've effectively done the previous 6 steps. So you now attain the first dhyana. And you do the same thing for all the other levels, through both the form level meditations, the first, second, third, fourth, and the formless ones, first, second, third, fourth. They have the same process, do the same thing. Then, the last part of this chapter, my pages, they talk about these afflictions, and they put them in 81 grades. It's a big math problem. You have 9 levels, you have 1 desire realm, you have 4 form realms, and you have 4 formless realms. 1 and 4 is 9. 9. Each of those has 3 grades, great, middle, and small. And then each of those 3 have 3. So each of those grades, each of those levels has 9, right? So 9 times 9 is 81. So that's what you have. You have the great, middle great, small great. And in the middle, you have great middles, middle, small middle. And small, you have great small, middle small, and small small. And these afflictions can be abandoned in 2 ways. You can temporarily suppress them. This is what you do with these preparation stages for the various dhyanas. Or you can eradicate them forever. Bingo, that's what we want to do. And that's the supermundane path, so we have to realize emptiness. Any questions? It wasn't that bad, was it? I couldn't understand it when I first read this stuff, and I was bored by it, but I got into it. Okay, are we done? Any comments, questions? Yeah. I wish you well.
I'm guessing this is either my misunderstanding or the answers here in the book, and I can't find it quickly enough. This 9 times 9 problem that you just discussed.
Right.
Yes, 9 times 9 is 81. But I'm thinking through it, and as we're doing the meditation to overcome the afflictions of the prior realm, yes, there's the 1 desire and then 4 form, 4 formless, but we never overcome that highest formless realm, right? Like, once we get to the peak of samsara, is that just the 9 last?
That's the peak.
Right, but so this.
Have you abandoned all the afflictions, is the question?
So, no.
Do you get rid of all 81?
Well, right, because I would think that the last 9 are the afflictions of the peak of samsara.
I think actually you abandon, it's stated you can abandon all 81. And they relate 4 to each realm, so there must be ones on that. The 4th one, do you do it before then? I see what you're saying. I actually think you must be doing it during it, because each level, if you just look at one level, each level has great, middle, and small. Each level has There's 9 levels, and each has 9. Each level has great, middle, and small. So you actually, during that first dhyana, you've got to get rid of all 9 of those. So you're probably doing that in that last one too.
But would you say that those 9 that you're getting rid of as you go into the jhana?
No, I think you're doing it during it.
Okay, during the jhana.
During the dhyana.
Dhyana.
We're sticking with Sanskrit tonight.
Okay. Are you calling those the afflictions of the first dhyana? Are you
when you eliminate the afflictions of the first dhyana, I think you would, and you want to, I think you would achieve the second one. But this is, I don't know for sure, and the book that would explain with this would be Leah Zahler's book, which I haven't really read. And I didn't have much interest in it before, and now I have a little more interest, because it kind of seems more experientially relevant than it did before. That's a good question, though. But so we'll stay tuned. But it says that the way, if we read how it's written, I think it says each realm, let's see, 14. Grades of afflictions of the desire realm. Each of the 9 levels has 3 grades of afflictions. That's straight from the book. That are further divided into 3. That's as much as I can say about that. Then we'll have to just see. Have to look into that. But the thing is they're probably, what I'm just going to guess is, since they each have ones in their level, you could get rid of them and get to that highest level in there, but then where are you? Like, not something I desire, I have to say.
Isn't this before we even have this is the mundane path?
Well, both, yeah.
Because when you talk about the bodhisattva path, when you get farther along up into the path of meditation to those higher grounds, you're starting to also eliminate the innate afflictions on these 81 levels, right?
Start over again? Are you talking about the bodhisattva path?
Yeah.
You're talking about a super mundane path.
Those are the super. Okay, so this is just the mundane before we get to the path of seeing.
Let's see. Actually, I think I'm not positive on that. Let me look here and see if it's in my notes. So the 7 mental contemplations are used for both the mundane and super mundane path. For the mundane path, you're looking at the grossness and peacefulness. For the super mundane path, you're looking at the Four Noble Truths.
So by the time you get up to the path,
and you don't really want to use the formless concentration because they're not that beneficial. It's better to stay in use the form
or the
first through fourth.
Because from the second ground up to the 8th ground, you're doing a lot of this, eliminating the afflictive, the innate afflictions, right? All these 81 that are coming from the whatever you call them, the fetters,
I'm not so sure how these two relate.
Okay, because the number is confusing.
That would be beyond me to compare this system to that.
To the
I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Okay, because the same number.
I know.
Confusing. Okay.
Which is.
Or is it just a different way of classifying?
I don't know. We'd have to look and see. We'd have to probably ask Geshe that question.
Yeah, but here we are talking about it from the point of view of absorptions, and then when you're talking about grounds and paths, we're talking about it from a different perspective.
Right. It's a super mundane path.
Yeah, you're using emptiness to also.
Right. Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's dedicate then.
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzing Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Fearless Supreme Spiritual Leader, Omniscient King of the Shakyas, Motherly Tara, Supreme Bestower of longevity and wisdom, vast ocean assembly of sources of refuge, grant propitiousness here and now for a nectar of benefit and bliss to flow. With a clear mind of extensive learning gained from following the wondrous traditions of Thubten, the Able One's teachings, you bring clarity to masses of disciples with the light of children, the lamp of the Dharma. May your lotus feet remain unfaltering for a very long time. Through your dharmic deeds of hearing, thinking, meditating, and so on, place those who seek the liberated path in harmony through immaculate discipline. Please lead all beings to liberation with undeclining excellent qualities of scripture and insight, and establish them in the glory of eternal bliss. May the deeds of explaining and practicing the Dharma, done by groups supporting the teachings and their upholders, who spread the view of dependent arising and non-violent actions in the 10 directions, and especially at Sravasti Abbey in the west, flourish.